Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show.
So the last time we sat down and talked, Leonard, we kind of went over history of your racing. We touched a little bit on the history of you as a mechanic, and I want to touch a little bit more base on that, because you have worked with, Doug Eichner, Tavis Kane. You've worked with a lot of riders that are a big part of ATV racing history, and I feel like we just barely scratched the surface on that. So the biggest thing is the I think when you hear the name Leonard Duncan, the first thing that pops up is that you worked, with Doug Eichner. Tell me a little bit about that, how it started, and kind of a little bit of the story of you and Doug, Jesus, you and Doug, um, throughout the entire career of working together.
So, Doug and I were kind of the odd couple because Lauren and Mark Earhart were what was supposed to be the creme de la creme, and then it was Doug. And um, and Doug was just a phenomenal rider. He could ride anything you put him on. It was great. Um, it was easy. He was easy to deal with. For a lot part of the career, as he got older, became a little crotchety, but that's neither here nor there. So back in 93, when we started working together, he had a good friend that owned Oregon Motorsports, who was also affiliated with LRD. And I don't know, Doug did some stuff for LRD, did some stuff for work for Oregon Motorsports. He got offered a job with Mark Lager, and he came down. That's how he came down to be down in California was to work for Mark Lager. And Bart asked Lauren, "Hey, will you take care of this kid?" Lauren said, "No problem, Bart." They were good friends, and Lauren knew Arlen, and Arlen, there was no bad blood about it. It was just, hey, that's good. This is what's best for Doug. Let's just take care of Doug.
Mm-hmm.
And so Doug and I, it started out where, hey, whatever you need, you gotta talk to me and call me. And Doug's not a talk. Doug's not a call you. I need this. I need that. It rapidly turned into working on his machines for him, and part of taking care of what he needed, as far as this is one of the things that I don't think a lot of mechanics understand. To get good at your trade or to understand your guy, you have to sacrifice life. When you sacrifice life, I spent days, hours at the shop prepping these Lagers and these practice bikes, and even when you started riding Lobos, I mean, I was down at the shop, making these machines stay alive, because as durable as they were, as hard of a rider as he was at some point in his career, it was a full-time job just to keep the thing rolling. And he would go out and ride for hours and hours, and then, no, he never brought me filthy machines. There was never attitude. There was never animosity in any way, shape, or form. He'd bring me back a machine and I would work on it. And I never had a problem with taking the time to tear them to the frame and bring them back up and make them what they need, put the bearings in that needed to be put in the suspension to make it work right. He was a welder and a fabricator because he worked for Lager. So if we had cracks or problems, hey, Doug, I need you to come by the shop and weld this. Boom, done.
Yeah.
A bit of rattle can, he's going to the races. Um, one of the things that I think made Doug faster was he knew that I was putting in so much effort on his machines,
Hmm.
and my personal life suffered because I was so into that. I was so
Right.
into on his bikes. My own racing career suffered because I wouldn't put that same kind of effort into it. But working on his machines meant more to me than just, some guy. Uh,
Hmm.
Everybody knows that if the history of Eichner, we had a little time in 2007 where he went his own way, and it caused a little bit of a problem in our lives because my son and daughter still call him Uncle Doug
Right.
because Juliana met him when she was 4. Danny Ray met him when he was 2.
Right.
And for
And I think that's a big thing too, just not to cut you off, but I think that is a big thing that a lot of people probably don't realize unless you've been in a serious rider mechanic relationship. Not to make it sound like you're getting married or anything, but
you
when
are,
you are with you essentially are, yes. Um, but you're not just showing up to the track or going to a shop and working on their machine. They become family because you are getting to know each other so well, and you have to, because they need to know that you are doing everything you possibly can, and like you said, sacrificing part of your personal life to make sure they have a machine that is ready to go and is at tip top shape. And they gain confidence from that, knowing that when I hop on, I turn the key on, hit the start button, or hop on, plug in the tether and kick it over, that machine, when it roars to life, it is 100% ready to race. And so it's anyone that's listening, it's not weird that your kids called him Uncle Doug because he is family.
he still is to this day. I mean,
Mhm.
um, there was unfortunately that there was a split, and for a number of years, the friendship was not so good. Even while he was still racing and I was still mechanicing or going to the races,
Mhm.
there was turmoil there. But um, Lauren, my brother, is the actual got us back together on a whim. We were doing a magazine article, and Lauren called him up and asked him if he wanted to come and do the article with us. Um, Unfortunately, Doug's wife was ill at the time, and he needed a break, and he said sure. And Brian Radovich, who's a young man that helps us out quite a bit and has been around for a number of years, he was riding the other machine, and it gave Doug and I a chance to talk. And I messed that up a little bit. This is after, unfortunately, Doug's wife had passed, and another person involved in the magazines was having an issue with same scenario with his wife, and they got to talk, and then Doug and I spent some time in the truck, driving back and talked, and
Mhm.
from there the friendship we started becoming friends again, and worked through our difficulties, because when you spend that much time with an individual, you're bonded together.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's not, there's not, Doug calls me today and says, "Hey, I need you." I'm calling Lauren, going, "Dude, I got to go take care of Doug. I'll be back." And,
Yeah.
7 hours drive and I'm there. Because he's another brother. He's
Mhm.
the guy that, I would have laid down on the track and let him use me for traction. Um,
Mhm.
we won Mount Morris, PA together, in the 250 Pro class and in the Open class. I mean, we
Right.
double dipped, and it was probably a highlight that I'll remember forever. Uh,
Mhm.
Back when Gary Denton and Spader and Farr and Hit, and I mean, you just name all these legends that were racing at the time, Scovey, and it's just, I mean, fast guys. And
Mhm.
the hardest thing about being that close with these guys is when they do fall off, because they're
Right.
going to. And you
Right.
pray that it's not your fault, that you
Right.
didn't have
Exactly.
a tie rod come loose, or you didn't have a tire come off. Because all mechanics are going to have a mistake.
Hmm.
I was very blessed with Doug that this didn't happen. And when he did fall off, he fell off at, I believe it was Redbud on that drop fadeaway jump off this after the
Hmm.
start line. Somebody
Yep.
was landed on somebody and pitched him off and damaged his shoulder. Um, you know, if I'm going to zip another man's pants up and pull him up, make sure he's dressed, it's going to be somebody that you're that close with, that's not a relative.
Right.
And yeah, I had to make sure he got dressed because he couldn't use his
Hmm.
arm. And
Right.
I mean, just uh, it's almost hard to talk about. I bet you if you talk to uh, Mark Notman about his relationship with Walker Fowler,
Hmm.
or talk to you and JJ. I
Hmm.
know you guys haven't been together as long, but the relationship is building and growing.
Right.
Um, you never undo that. Mark Baldwin and Tim Farr.
Right. Right.
Those guys they'll be joined for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's probably other duos. My buddy Raphael Sonic spent
Hmm.
years going places with this guy, and when he was just a spectator, and now he's freaking a FIM cross country world champion.
Right.
He's won more of those events, and went on a streak of podium finishes. He's in the record book.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple riders that I've got to spend large portions of my life with, and it's a very special thing. The hardest thing about it is, are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, Score, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and Works, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450-655-4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs. When you're learning a new rider or you're learning a new group and it doesn't work out.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I've had a couple arrangements right at the end of my mechanic time going to the races that didn't go
Mhm.
well, and it's a bummer because they were good people. You
Right.
know,
Right.
Travis Damon. I hold nothing against that kid. He's a works champion. Um, he's phenomenally strong, great rider. I think that he will probably win many more championships in the future.
Hmm.
Um, and I got to work with Tori Matisius a little bit, and this chick's freaking 3 years undefeated or something like that. I mean, not under my banner, but hey, it just proves that she is a dominant force, and she has a great package and a great team with her, and it worked out for her, and that's
Right.
that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another thing too, is you might be a people person. You might get along with a lot of people, but it doesn't mean that you are going to get along with everyone. It doesn't mean you can work alongside everybody.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's your fault. Your personality, their personality just didn't jive.
There's just little situations that come up sometimes, and other people get involved, and
Mhm,
it's the people that get involved that yap in other people's ears that really cause damage, because
mhm,
at this point in time in my life, and as many years as I've been doing it, I know this sounds probably horrible to some people, but I don't do it for free.
mhm,
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to be paid what it's worth and what I'm worth, or I'm not going to do it.
mhm,
And
mhm,
my wife, this is this is my wife when we first started dating. Um, I was going to the works races, and she goes, "Well, when you leave me for these days, you better be coming home with a paycheck."
yeah.
And I was doing a lot of I was undervaluing myself drastically and just wanted to be a
Mhm,
part of the show. And within like 3 weeks, totally reversed itself, changed. And, ever since then, it hasn't been an issue. But
right,
the relationship, the bonding process, only the people that have spent time with that one guy
mhm,
that many years will understand it. Um, the people that are listening, they may think it's corny, or they may think that it's not as cool to show that side of yourself. But you know, Doug Eichner is a very special man to me, and he's done some
mhm,
things on my machines that I did not think possible. He's won races when he shouldn't have. Um, and he's just a phenomenal rider and a phenomenal athlete, especially a guy
mhm,
that was in his late 40s winning the works championships against guys that were 10 years younger than him.
mhm.
And at the peak of their career, I mean, he raced against guys like Josh Fredericks, who was just an animal. That guy is fierce, fierce.
Right.
Um, some of the other guys that he rode against, he raced when Bo Barron was just breaking in.
Mhm,
So, you can say, well, he didn't have the caliber of people. That's why he won so many races. Well, when he was racing works, there were 26 pros.
right.
Care who you are. There's 26 guys. Got to beat him. And he did. So
Mhm,
you have to take your hat off and go, okay, because now there's 8 pros. And there's nothing against Travis, and there's nothing against Bo and the guys that are winning the races. But when there's less pros, there's less pros. But when there's 26 pros, you know, that's a lot
That's
of guys.
that's not 26 pros that don't have any talent.
No,
That's 26 guys that are still fast.
Doug came from the north, Washington,
Mhm,
and he's got a buddy up there, Keith Marks. This guy was a thorn in our side because he was fast,
mhm,
and you had to watch your P's and Q's or he'd beat you. And Doug freaking held him off, took care of him. He raced in the nationals, he raced some work stuff, but yeah, the guy was fast. Uh, Hated getting beaten by us, but hats off, mad respect for the guy because
mhm,
he was just one of those guys that was just fast enough to cause you a little grief if you
mhm.
bought.
Right,
Uh,
right. You make a
he-
mistake, he's right there.
yes, yes, and some of the guys that came out and raced works in the beginning were super fast desert guys because works in the beginning was more of a desert environment,
Mhm.
and they would really really put it on. um Not a lot of people realize Doug's the only guy to ever have a perfect season at works.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's very
Granted,
impressive.
6 races, but it was 6 races. That's what the series
Right.
was,
Right.
you know?
And it doesn't matter though. I mean, it's those 6 races or 10 races, 15, whatever. If you can manage to win every single one, that is something to be proud of.
Yeah. And, you didn't take a whole lot of stake in it at the time.
Mhm,
This is the one thing that I don't know about you or Mark or any of the other guys. I never ask.
mhm.
Uh, we never celebrated.
No, and obviously this isn't about me, but that's you have a quick moment on the podium, you feel really proud about yourself, but once you're done at the podium, people are done taking pictures, it's back to work. You get to feel, and I don't know about other people, but for myself anyways, I feel proud about myself for a little bit, but then it's, what's the next thing I need to do? And it's already in the back of my head, not thinking about it. You get that maybe 5 minutes of, great job, let's take a picture, you're the best, push the bike back. Okay, yeah, it was a really cool day. We did a good job. But we're already thinking about what's tomorrow. We're already thinking about what's in 2 hours.
Yeah, I got a race freaking in 2 weeks, or I got a race the next weekend in a
Right.
different series, different bike, and that bike's not
Mm-hmm.
done. Well, I mean, you
Right.
need
Right.
homes so I can finish that machine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we won from a stretch of period of time, like 85% of the races we raced.
Mm-hmm.
The only other guy I know that he can even say that is Joel Hetrick. Um,
Right.
I mean, when you have a dominant win streak where you just everything we raced, we won, from
Mm-hmm.
Baja to West in the Desert to quad cross to I mean, just everything it works. Everything he threw his leg over, every series he went and raced, he won.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I didn't go to the local races. I would prep the bike and send him.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I went. It was just because there was just so much work.
Right.
You couldn't develop it all and go do it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I hope that every rider that listens to this and mechanic duo understand how you have to take care of that individual. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily saying the rider needs to take care of the mechanic needs to take care of the rider, but the rider needs to take care of the mechanic. One of the things that we would show up at the races in the old Duncan box van.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing stories, God, we hated seeing that thing pull in the racetrack. Well, you know what? This is a time when some of the places when we went racing, Doug was the only guy with a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they had a mechanic, it wasn't the same deal. They were in a pickup truck or whatever.
Right.
We would get the easy up set up, we get the bikes out there, and then I would get in the trailer and I would lay out the gear bag, put the chair out, put the towel down, get his boots set, make sure
Mm-hmm.
that if we had a cooler, you get the cooler near where he needed it. Everything was there so that when he walked in the trailer to get ready, he just got ready. He didn't
Right.
have to set up. And some guys are like, well, why would you do all that? Well, because that's what you do at that level for that guy that day. Because what
Mm-hmm.
you want is you want him to be focused on racing, not finding his goggles or his boot or his glove. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want him to crap. You want to make it as easy for him to do what he needs to do as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that in pro motocross and other forms of racing, that is true. They do those kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not as much in the ATV world anymore.
Yeah, I think especially in the ATV world, I mean, we're a lot more at this day and age, we are a lot more towards a grassroots style motorsport than, especially the pro side on two wheels. And it doesn't matter if that's in the dirt or on the asphalt. I mean, those guys, if you are a pro rider, you're still going to have some privateer guys, but your factory guys or some of your people on a decent team, that's what happens on race day. Everything is right there. You go in and you get dressed. Some of these guys have a boot brand there that'll clean your boots in between the motos.
Right.
ATV side of things, we really don't have anything like that. It's on us. It's on you as the rider or your little team that you're with. You're the rider, the mechanic, the rider, another family member. We're doing everything ourselves. And I
Yeah.
apologize to that this might be not it might not be the most exciting moment right now, but this is a story that I believe needed to be heard. And you've touched on the Doug Eichner story many times. You've given out little bits and pieces, but I think the full story of where you come from as a race ATV mechanic and kind of saying what you think it takes to be a top level mechanic, because I see a lot of those things, and I think it's why we get along so well is we have a lot of these same um, ideas and beliefs on what it takes to get your rider to that next step.
The one thing that when you say these things about, top mechanic, and I don't like to hear those things. Some people revel in that. No, I am just a dude. Put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. The reason I don't like it is because early on, at different points in time in my career, you get big headed and you think that you are the shit. Well,
Mhm,
that's as soon as you do that, smack, you just got
mhm,
smacked down because something you didn't do or something, it's gonna be okay, don't worry about it, and it breaks. And
mhm,
fortunately for me, I would have issues, but we still had success.
mhm, mhm,
It was never catastrophic, but it was enough to reset. You are not all you think you are. Let's get back to work. Put your head down. And,
mhm,
you know, gosh, I think it was 2004. I think it was 2004. Long season. I think we raced 14 works races that year. And we started out the season in 27th place in points.
mhm.
Not because we broke, but because we ran out of gas and then got a penalty
Okay.
because we gassed off the track. And it wasn't because of anything other than the fact that I enlisted somebody to help.
Mhm.
Great guy. And when he plunged the dump can, he didn't push it down.
Oh.
He just set it in the hole.
Uh-huh.
My mistake for, not having him do it correctly. Not his. And I tried to run across the pits to get him on the other side and pit him because it was still in the pits. It would have still
Mhm,
been legal, even though he was out of our pit box.
mhm.
Later on, they changed that. You couldn't pit in somebody else's. So
Okay.
I couldn't catch him. Are you ready to be captivated by one of nature's masterpieces? Discover the breathtaking beauty of Antelope Slot Canyon, a natural wonder in Page, Arizona. Join us on a guided tour and immerse yourself in the mystical light beams, rich colors, and serene landscapes. With tours at prime sunbeam hours, experience photographer's paradise and capture memories that will last a lifetime. Comfortable shoes, a camera, and a smile are all you need for this adventure. Book your journey today at Antelope Slot Canyon Tours and let the canyon enchant you. Please visit us now, antelopeslotcanyon.com, for more details. He went on the last lap about, quarter mile from the
Mhm.
finish. He ran out of gas. And with take the somebody standing there handed him fuel, he put it in, got to the finish line, and he's freaking livid because he had got
Mhm.
fifth, or something like that. And with the penalty, we were 27th.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
And
that's a bummer.
it took us 5 races to get the point lead.
Yeah.
And that was pretty heroic, going from 27th to first.
That's actually really impressive when you think about it.
Josh Fredericks had the point lead, and something happened. I don't remember exactly what. Um, God, I'm trying to think of the kid's name that was going to take over the point lead, and Doug passed him.
Mhm.
And it was one of those things where there's no way Doug can make up the difference because Doug was behind for whatever reason. And there's just no way he's going to catch that guy. And he caught that guy
Mhm.
and put double that time on him in like the last two laps. Uh,
Yeah.
and you're just like, no way, really? And this is where it's all about luck. And we had gas issues that whole year.
Okay.
So we're in Monticello, Utah. Doug crosses the finish line. I'm holding the gas can in my hand that's got the gas that was supposed to be in the tank that's in the gas can. And he crosses the finish line. And we had fortunately parked. I mean, we're probably 40 yards, 50 yards from the finish line. He rolls
Hmm.
to the truck, bike's running, and he just turns to put it on the lip of the trailer and it shut off.
Oh man.
And he was like, what happened? What's going on? And I go, nothing, Doug, don't worry about it. I didn't tell him till we were going home.
Right. Right.
I almost ran you out of gas again.
Almost.
Um,
I would say that you just had it calculated that good.
I really did try to calculate the exact
Hmm.
how much gas. So a lot of teams, when you would dump gas in the dry breaks, they would
Hmm.
dump, gallons.
Yep.
Well, I figured out how big our tank was, where we would be you know, at the hour to go that other 30 minutes, how much gas
Hmm.
we actually need, how far we could actually push it, and calculate it by watching the tank and where it was. And I
Hmm.
would drop 3/4 of a gallon of gas most of the time.
Hmm.
And when the race was over, we were out of fuel. I mean, it barely had enough to get to the finish line.
You're
And
running on fumes.
yeah, because why do I want to dump 2 gallons?
Right.
I mean, if he crashes and tips upside down and we lose gas, we run out of gas. But we
Right.
lost the race anyways. So, he's going to
Yeah,
stop.
exactly. Right.
So there's other, outside deals. We were racing in Goldendale, Oregon or Washington,
Mhm.
Washington. And Josh Fredericks was on fire. And this is the race that's setting up the finals for who's going to be the champion. There's 3 rounds or 2 rounds left, and Doug has to win two and get a second to take the title.
Mhm.
And Josh is 5 seconds behind him from the first lap until we pit.
Wow.
I dropped 3/4 of a tank of gas. They dropped 3 gallons.
Wow.
And the difference of that is 5 seconds.
Yep.
Had a 10-second lead for the rest of the race. Granted, it doesn't sound like a lot, but
Hmm.
instead of Josh being right there, Josh is now just slightly back.
Right. Right.
And
Well, and when you're talking about a lead gap, 10 seconds is a lot. When you actually visualize that ATV is there, that ATV is 10 seconds back. Holy crap.
right. And 5 seconds is nothing. I mean,
Right.
they were, bumper to bumper
Hmm.
most of the race. And like I said, Josh Fredericks was a fierce competitor. And if Josh is close, Josh has got a chance. When you
Right.
open the gap, there was a room for doubt.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, on that last lap, the gap opened up a little bit, a little bit and a little bit. And, after that pit, it put doubt.
Hmm.
And then on the last lap, there was even more doubt so that he could, eke out just a little bit more of a space. And
Yep.
basically that was the race that won us the title because he couldn't come back from that. Winning that one put us in the spot in the driver's seat.
Right.
And um, I tried to calculate everything. I remember I could calculate what place the two classes were because there was a pro class and an open class, and I could tell you who was where.
Okay.
And when I went back years later, I couldn't. I don't know
Yeah.
why I couldn't. I just couldn't. I
Yeah.
just wasn't that into it. Maybe I didn't
Hmm.
recognize who was who, or I
And
just
you weren't so involved with it. Once you've been away for a little bit, you're not you're not as in touch with it as you were if you are every single weekend,
Yeah, and
race weekend.
I had to know the positions. I was counting the points. I was counting the
Right.
seconds. You know, and I was even doing it for the for the pro-am class.
Hmm.
And somebody would say, "Well, so and so, where's they at?" And I'd tell them, and they'd be like, "What? How do you know?" Count them when they come by. And they'd be in that position, and they'd like, "How did you know that?" Because I've been counting it since the green flag dropped,
Right.
and counting the seconds and the times. That part of being the mechanic is, you know, um, we didn't do radios. We got to do radios a little bit, and
Okay.
Doug didn't want me to talk on the radio because I get all excited, would chatter his ear off the whole time. I talked to him the whole race. And he says, "This
Hmm.
is all you can tell me is you can tell me interval and my position, or tell me when it's time to pit."
Hmm.
Okay. So we go to Havasu, and Havasu was kind of Doug's track. He had really good success there.
Yep.
Just like Braxton Gross and Mike Sloan had success there. Bo Barron, that's his Achilles heel. He freaking does not have success there. He's won
Right.
a couple times, but he just doesn't have luck there.
Yep.
Uh, so they pitted in the starting area. So you'd run the start, then they'd set up the pits, and there was a
Mhm.
horseshoe, and they'd come through the horseshoe. Well, Doug and Josh, I think Josh hole shot it, and Doug was coming through the field. Doug got a bad start, had to come through the field.
Okay.
And I don't even know what lap we're on, but we're at the pits. We're at the pit time. And um, they come into the pits together.
Hmm.
Josh's bike let go coming out of the horseshoe.
Uh-huh.
Doug's pit, our pit is the angle that you would take out of the horseshoe. You'd make the turn, but you wouldn't finish turning. You'd just drift right into the pit.
Okay.
Josh has still made the turn because his pit's past us. So he's got to go straight.
Okay.
Well, Doug hit Josh's tire, goes down in a heap right there. The bike comes straight to me
Yeah.
and bounces his head off the freaking ground.
Hmm.
We get it all put him back on, fired and gassed and out of there in the lead. Yeah, right. Really? How do you have the lead when third, fourth, fifth, these guys are all coming? Well, they
Right.
had enough lead already. And Doug, he goes and he asks, "Where's Josh?" And he goes, "He's in the pits." Freaking 2 minutes later, "Where's Josh?" "In the pits."
Hmm.
And he said, "Doug, you just asked me that. You all right?" My head hurts. You know. A couple minutes later, "Where's Josh?" And he says, "Doug, he's in the pits." As the race went on, he came back
Uh-huh.
senses, but it rung his bell.
Oh
He
yeah. Yeah.
was a little loopy for there for a while. I mean, in most cases nowadays, you might just pull him out of the race because of it,
Right.
you know. And but but this is the evolution of how we raced. I mean, like I
Hmm.
said, if you were injured, you kept going.
Right.
Stop,
Right. Do
you know.
everything you possibly can to get across that checker.
Exactly. You never want to be hurt. You never want to miss the end of the race. You just don't do those things. I mean,
Hmm.
my kids, when I say some of the things I do to them about pain doesn't hurt. Losing hurts.
Hmm.
Not being able to succeed hurts. You got to get over it. They look at me like I'm
Right.
totally nuts. I mean, they do. Especially my daughters, Valeria and Paula. They just
Hmm.
because they've been raised in a different environment where it's not
Right. Right. And I mean, I think that's a big thing too, is until you're in that moment, you really don't understand either, because it's not just, oh, I went down, I'm in pain. You went down, and depending on what happened, you may not be in pain for a little while, because you go down and the adrenaline pumps and you get that rush, like, I got to get back up. I'm okay. Get on the bike, go. Then it's, oh, shoot, this, my leg hurts or my shoulder, my head hurts. Well, we're here. Let's keep going.
You know, one of the things you didn't ask me about is you didn't ask me about Baja.
We're getting there.
Okay, all right. But
We're getting there.
one of the coolest things that I remember about Doug. So Doug had went to Polaris. This is 2008, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He's with Polaris. We're at Havasu, and I'm helping a couple other guys. And Doug has just a phenomenal ride. He's on the Polaris. He wins the race, and it was freaking 100+ degrees. I mean, it was freaking cooking. And his wife was there, and I freaking ran over to those guys and I says, "This is what you have to do because Doug can't handle the heat like he could when he was younger. But if you do
Right.
not do this, you'll have a problem." And I said, "You need to get his head cool. Don't be dumping water all over his body,
Mm-hmm.
but a cold rag on his head and get him in a chair because all the riders were having a problem because it was so
Okay.
hot."
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. The race was over. You need to cool this man down. He's in his
Mm-hmm.
40s, the other guys are in their 30s, most of them will
Right.
drink some water and walk it off. But,
Yep.
you he didn't always drink enough fluids. And I just knew that he had exerted himself. You could tell by the last lap,
Mm-hmm.
fortunately for him, he had a big gap it didn't matter. But if he'd had to go another lap, it might have been a problem,
Right.
and I think that's what separates you from other people. You can be mad at somebody or hold a grudge, but when they're in need, you're there. And
Right.
I don't even think Doug knew that I went over there and made sure that they knew what to do because I knew they
Mm-hmm.
did. I
Right.
knew the guys that were working on the bike. I knew that his wife had not been to the races. She didn't know all the ins and outs. But I said, if you don't
Yep.
do, these are what you have to do. You have to take care of these
Right.
things. And you as a mechanic know your rider and know that when he comes
Mm-hmm.
in, certain things that you have to do for him
Mm-hmm.
to make sure they're okay.
Right.
And not everybody gets it.
Right.
Um,
No, and not everybody knows what they need to do either. You can have, and you see it all the time that gets off the track, doesn't matter who it is. If they did good, good job. Let's go. They did bad, it's they come up and tell them what they did. No rider wants to come off that track giving it their all, especially in these longer races that pro am and pro riders face. Nobody wants to come off that track and just hear about all the stuff they did wrong.
no, you know what? I think that I think that dads need to go through a
Mm-hmm.
school
Yeah,
on this. Um,
100%.
they're the ones that are the biggest culprits. Um, that you need to have a debriefing
Mm-hmm.
where you have specific questions you ask, but this is where
Mm-hmm.
you learn how the bike is running. This is how you learn how the suspension is. This is how you learn how the
Mm-hmm.
traction is. And if you watch teams like Takati and in MotoGP, and you look at some of the F1 stuff, they have these debriefings and
Mm-hmm.
they're discussing the vehicle and the machine, and then there's a guy there
Right.
that is kind of like the confidant. It may not be the
Right.
mechanic. Maybe he's the rider advisor. Excuse me. Um, and they talk about the lines.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the track and the conditions and the things like that. And you really need to educate your riders because they're not seeing what you're seeing, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
feeling or seeing what they're seeing.
Right.
Um, and it takes time. There are mechanics that I know that can watch the bike and tell you what's wrong with it and tell you what the rider's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So Eichner was one of those guys that it was difficult
Mm-hmm.
um, because he adapted to the defect. sometimes I was working just get the suspension too stiff and he would adapt. If I was too
Right.
soft, he could adapt. Um, Riding so many different machines from Suzuki LT 250s to TRX 250Rs to jumping on the LTZ 400 and the KFX 700 and
Mm-hmm.
just he rode an LTR 450 and he could ride all of these machines. You go from a Lager 250R to a Roll 250R.
Right.
They are
That's not the
nowhere on
same.
the same planet.
Right.
They do not work the same. They do not go through the bumps the same. And this is a guy that could ride one race and the other one the next race, and his finishes would be super close.
Right.
His
Right.
lap time would
And I
just
mean,
be
this is a guy that could also, you know, think most people know the Banshee isn't the best machine for a racetrack, especially a motocross track. Obviously, his wasn't a stock machine, but he was one. When you're talking about racing a Banshee, Doug Eichner is probably the number one guy you think of when it comes to racing a Banshee.
yes.
And and then go home. He's riding lately riding a KTM at home, shows up to a motocross race, hops on a YFZ that he's never ridden before, and he did not look bad on it
And he didn't
at
complain.
all. Right.
I think
Right.
you made one adjustment for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
One
know,
small adjustment.
I mean, I was a little stressed about that event because I didn't know how I was going to do what I was there to do and take care of him. And you fortunately stepped up to the plate and took care of it. And I appreciate that.
Right. And I didn't get to do nearly as much as I wanted to or thought I'd be able to do, just because of all the other things I got going on. But yeah, one small shock rebound adjustment, and that was it.
I think that if we could have toned that thing down just a little bit, he could have went faster
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
age, he's 59 years old. I mean, I
Right.
don't care how great of a rider you are. At 59 years old, you've lost a little bit of that edge
Mm-hmm.
and the snap. So when we went from the 0405 platform, which was built heavily, was sink you into the seat and just your arms didn't even tug. It was just
Mm-hmm.
smooth acceleration and you didn't even realize how
Mm-hmm.
fast. To the '06, where when you cracked the throttle, your arms stretched out and you were like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm. Right.
whether it was
Right. It
fast or
had
not.
that hit.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
That affected Eichner, in his ability
Mm-hmm.
to the same speed and to
Right.
handle because that snap. You put FCR on the '05 with the similar motor mods, but the design of the engine
Mm-hmm.
was and
Right. That
not
oh
everybody.
0405 was just a little more linear in the power curve, and there's a reason why a lot of people liked it I mean, still to this day.
I love that motor. I love that. I mean, we won a few races with the '06 up style, but most
Mm-hmm.
of the championships were on that '05, '04, '05 platform because it was just
Mm-hmm.
so easy. I could take a I could take a good rider and make them
Mm-hmm.
better machine because it didn't scare them or didn't wear them out.
Right.
You'd have to take a little edge off on the '06 up. And when you took that
Mm-hmm.
edge off, then maybe you didn't have the same kind of power that you needed to do what you needed to make them to do that. We
Right.
learned some
Right.
ignition curves on the vortex, things like that to make it easier, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still that '04 '05 stuff was this just incredible.
Right.
Still is, if you can get training parts, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but shift gears a little bit. I know you spent a good amount of time in Mexico with the Baja race. When did you first go to Baja?
So I went down with Doug Lauren and Doug Roll one year for
Mhm.
Baja, just as the driver. I was just driving. I
Okay.
wasn't working on anything, wasn't pitting. Um, and but that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then a guy named Craig Christie reached out and he was racing Raptor 700s in Baja.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to help him. And and did some work for him and everything. And I told him, I says, dude, you're shooting up the wrong tree. There's not enough development for this machine to get you where you want to be. It's the wrong
Mhm.
bike. Do you see anybody else out there racing a Raptor? He goes, no, they're all on Hondas. And I go, well, what do you think?
Mhm.
He says, you need to be riding a Honda. Okay. How much? This is a rough quote. This is what the quote is over the phone. Okay. Bike will be there in a couple days. Okay. Never thought another thing of it.
Mhm.
Guy shows up. Hey, I'm dropping this bike off for Craig Christie. Really? All right. Great. Built him a desert bike and he went
Mhm.
and started racing a few years without us. In 2007, the ball we went to Cabo. The
Okay.
1000 went to Cabo. And I wasn't working with Doug at that time. He had went his way, and I was looking for a new path. And Craig scooped me up and put me on his squad to help him out. And we went to Cabo, and that was my first race with the team. And we didn't win, but we got third, and it was a great race.
Mhm.
We had some horrific problems during that race, not with the bike, fortunately, but with
Mhm.
uh, the chase crews, from broken vehicles to, some idiot was driving the Hummer too fast. Won't mention any names, and turned the blocks upside down on the batteries.
Oh man.
Yeah, bad deal. Yeah, it was kind of a bad deal. One of the guys, they hit a cow and ripped up
Oh
the,
wow.
the front of the vehicle and damaged the cooling system.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, just crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, it was rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got through it all and ended up getting third, and
Mhm.
we came back. And in 2009, Craig was the overall point score champion, for
Mhm.
ATV. He wasn't in class 25, he was in class 24 to win the overall.
Okay.
You've heard of Wayne Matlock and Mike Caffro. These
Mhm.
guys are phenomenal desert racers. We beat those guys with overall points,
Mhm.
uh, and won the class 24 title. I think he won the 24 title two or three times before he moved up
Okay.
in the class. So we spent a number of years down there with him. And when he decided to go into trucks and it petered out, yeah, it was, it ran its course and you went on to the next.
Mhm.
I think at that time after I was done with Baja, I met up Mike Sloan,
Mhm.
and his dad wanted us to build a motor. And then next thing young Mike is 16 and he's driving over to San Diego from Arizona to have me work on his bikes. And
Yeah.
Mike and I had I think it was 2008 to 2018, 2019,
Okay.
you know.
Not a bad run.
No, won three titles in the works,
Mhm.
two pro-am and one pro title. And he was on a score team twice, I believe, that won uh, the championship. And then he was
Okay.
also on two of the best in the desert teams that won the titles.
Mhm.
So, or three of them, I think. And so he was an asset. He's a very talented young man, very talented.
Mhm.
Um, great guy to deal with. Very quiet. I mean, I
Yeah.
get a lot of these quiet guys
Yeah.
to deal with. And Aaron Simmons was the writer of record on that Best in the Desert deal from 17 to 20. And I don't think that guy hardly talked at all. Brother freaking would never shut up, but he didn't talk a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you develop really, like, I mean, I'll be friends with the Simmons boys forever because it's kind of like the Fuller boys. I worked
Mhm.
with Brian when their dad was racing three wheelers. I'd go
Mhm.
practice with his dad because I was racing three wheelers at the time.
Mhm.
Then I did some mechanic work for the dad. When he had came back and raced some endurance races before he retired.
Mhm.
Then I got Garen's mechanic, and I got to be Kyle's mechanic. Um, So there's special relationships. I mean, I've like we've talked, I've got to work with so many cool people,
Yeah.
uh, and you don't even realize how many of them that you get to work with over time. Uh,
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the one thing that I haven't got to do yet is I haven't got to go do a cross country series. I would like to do that. Uh,
Okay.
we didn't, Doug and I didn't win the 250 pro class, but we won three motocross titles in the open class.
Yep.
And you're, oh, it's just the open class. Well, you still have to go race the race. And he was riding a banshee, come
Right.
on, ride the
Right.
banshee. Um, and I would love to do the cross country stuff. I don't know if at this point in time in my life it's feasible to
Right.
go back
And you
there.
never know. I mean, you might have somebody that at some point comes up to you and wants you even just to build and prep a bike. Or who knows, maybe you're gonna be going to the races again at some point.
You know what? I'm not for a while there. I said I was over it. You know what? I'm not
Hmm.
against it. I really am not. There again comes down to the situation and the people that you work with. Is it going to be right? Is it not going to be right? Um, I I am kind of stubborn and picky. I want to have a lot of control in how it works because
Hmm.
the last thing I want to do is to go mismatch things that don't work in my world.
Right.
And if you let me work with the guy, the rider, I can learn the rider pretty
Yep.
quick, and then I know how to set the bike for that individual so that there's no issues. It-
Hmm.
you know, one of the things that one of the guys I worked with, Josh Rowe, he would always mess with the clutch lever, and I had to fricking slap his hand because he kept spinning the dial and frying the clutch. So
Uh-huh.
I was teaching him not to do that, but he had a specific way he liked that brake lever. And it took me
Hmm.
quite a while to figure out where he liked it. And once he
Hmm.
liked it, everybody else adapted to it because it worked for them too. It was super
Hmm.
cool. Um, but it took me a while to get that down. But
Yeah.
um, most of the guys, once you learn what they like and they're comfortable with what you're doing,
Hmm.
uh, they're good to go
Yeah.
and they trust you
Absolutely.
and you don't have to worry about it. I don't think I would work with an amateur team
Hmm.
and maybe a pro-am team or a pro sport team, but not, not XC2. I could see doing, but XC2, man, those guys, dude, if you know how deep that class is, you got
Oh,
30
it's
guys that could win the race.
right. Absolutely. It's crazy.
Unreal, man.
Yeah.
It it's just the right guy, right time, right thing. I'm not too old yet. I'm not decrepit yet. I mean, I'm getting
Hmm.
there, but I'm not. At 58, I think I feel pretty good.
Hmm.
The deficiencies haven't stopped me from working. I worked all day today, and I'll probably work all day tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's a 7 day work week thing. It's not about I have to work. It's I love to work. I love to work on ATVs. And
Hmm. Well, and I think that's something that's really important too, is it's not that you just went out and you found a job. You have a hobby that you turned into your career. And you've kept it fun, you've kept it to it's always been a
whoa, whoa,
passion.
whoa, 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 what are you talking about? Fun? Whoever said this was fun?
You enjoy what you do.
I do enjoy what I do,
Mhm.
and for the sarcasm there, that it is fun, and
Mhm.
um, you know, there's nothing like standing on the top of the podium. And I'll be
It's
totally honest
yeah.
with you. We went through a dry spell there. Mike Sloan won those two pro-am titles back to back, and then he was in the pro class, and we were fighting against Bo Barron. And if anybody's raced against Bo Barron, he is freaking just the fiercest competitor. And I don't remember if Bo won every title, but gosh, it was just like it was either him or Hagsmith. and
Mm-hmm.
they were just fast, and we were struggling, and we were third or fourth, but we were coming. And then we were second, and in 2018 it came down to two races left, and unfortunately in Mesquite there was a fatality. God bless the family and the young man that passed. And we didn't race,
Mm-hmm.
and we took the bike home, pre-prepped, got it ready, and they turned it into a double points race. So winner take all. Whoever won that
Mm-hmm.
race was going to be number one. Didn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
And Bo was sick. And for Bo to be sick and not be able to go out and perform like Bo performs, he had to be really sick.
It's
But
pretty bad. Yeah.
they battled wheel to wheel the whole race. And Mike waved off the pit. And I freaking shit myself because I just knew he was going to run out of gas.
Yeah.
And he didn't.
Wow.
He ran out of gas at the podium. Yeah, do you think I'm kidding? He ran out of gas at the podium.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And blowing off the pit, won him the race, won him the title because there was a gap,
Mm-hmm.
gave him just enough room. Bo was fast on the last lap, probably faster than Mike was, but not
Mm-hmm.
enough to close the gap. And hats off to Bo Barron for all the championships that he's had. He's become a friend, even though he was a competitor for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, your career is super young. And I think I asked Mark Notman this, and I don't think he could answer me what his
Mm-hmm.
greatest. Well, his years aren't over, so it's kind of hard to
Mm-hmm.
answer that.
Right.
I never went back to the races again, and nothing against all the championships I won with Doug or all the things I did with Sonic and Christy and all the other guys. I'd have to say 2018 was the greatest year that I freaking ever had.
Mm-hmm.
We won Best in the Desert. We won Works. We won AZOP in three different classes, the bikes that I worked on, all the machines that I had control over. And yeah, two of those classes were amateur, but it doesn't matter. We won everything I touched, I won.
Yeah.
And it's a once in a lifetime year.
Absolutely, that is.
Yeah. And I mean, back to your what you said earlier about the accolades and all that, bro. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. I don't want people to say those things to me. I
Yeah,
don't.
and I mean, I think that just goes to show that you are somebody that, well, obviously you're still working at this. You're still going, like you said, you're still working on ATVs every day. And you kind of said it too, that once you personally think that you are the best, you're either going to plateau or you're going to drop or you just fade away because you're no longer, if you think that you're the best, you're going to fade off into the distance because you're not trying to better yourself anymore.
Right.
And like, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest things is, myself, I've only known you for about 4 years now.
Right.
I've known the Duncan Racing name since I was in middle school, reading Dirt Wheels magazines, reading all the everything online about ATV racing and just involving myself around ATVs. That's always been a name that is at the top of the tiers. And so to me, you are one of the best. You think of Doug Eichner, you think of yourself next to him. In my eyes, you're the man next to Doug Eichner and all of his victories and the highs of his career. And so people are going to see you as the best or one of the best.
Well, I
And
appreciate that. Not to cut you off, but you look at guys like Mark Baldwin and Mark Notman and Paul Turner, not the Paul Turner that's the two-stroke guy, but the Paul Turner that's the mechanic back at the
Mhm,
National. Um, there's other guys that I could name that I'm not naming. That these guys um, are phenomenally intelligent and they do amazing work. Um, so if I'm looking at it from a distance, and I just it's hard to put myself in that category,
mhm,
knowing who I am, knowing the life I've had and the things that I've got to go do. Yeah, I think it's great that I've had success. I've done all these great things,
mhm,
and I've done it in multiple different arenas, not just motocross or not just TT or not just this. We've got to win at desert and off road and motocross and endurance racing, and the diversification is awesome. But I never won that motocross title. Didn't get the Mickey Thompson reign.
right.
I didn't win a GNCC title.
Mhm,
So those are the iconic levels when you talk to all of the fans
mhm,
about ATV racing. Well, you never
right.
won that, and I go, well, I never won that. I never really had the opportunity. I raced 3 seasons with Eichner, and I think the best we got was third in the 250 Pro class. But I
Mhm,
never went back. I wasn't Travis Spader's mechanic. Paul Turner was.
yep.
Mark, I can't think of his last name, but Mark, another gentleman we know named Mark, was his mechanic for a couple years,
Mhm,
and it just didn't work out for me.
mhm,
I mean, I got to go hang out with Bob Sloan before he passed, but I wasn't his mechanic, and I didn't become a mechanic for those guys back there. So
mhm,
there's still notches in the bedpost or in the gun handle or the whatever you want to call it that aren't
right.
fulfilled. Um, so greatest of all time, who is it? I don't know. It's
Right.
probably it's probably one of those guys I mentioned. Uh,
Mhm,
Mark Baldwin is a force to be reckoned with as far as a
mhm,
mechanic, as far as an engine guy.
mhm,
Um, so you could tip your hat to him, Paul Turner, Mark Notman, and there again, anybody that I didn't mention, please don't take offense because
right.
you guys are all outstanding.
There's a lot of people that have come and gone, but those are the people that and I mean a good chunk of them are you don't really see in our sport anymore, but like someone like Mark Baldwin who has been around forever and he's still there today.
We were
And
rookies,
yourself as well. You're not going to the races, but you are still involved today.
right? I am.
Mhm,
Did you by
mhm.
chance, Gene, that did you see that red and white Banshee?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Thing
what do
is
you think?
pretty sweet.
I think it's one of the prettiest ones I've ever built.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No,
It's
I mean, the all of them done well are all beautiful, but yeah, and that's something too is somebody like yourself that puts that attention to detail to stuff too. Like most people won't notice, but there's a small chunk of people that will see that small detail and they can't help but tip their hat to you.
well, I appreciate that. I really
Hmm.
do.
Yeah.
I mean, meeting people like you, becoming friends with your family and you, and
Hmm.
um, the way you guys treated us at the Briar Cliff race, gosh, it was just unbelievable. And that's one of the reasons why I think that I'm so attached to the ATV world
Hmm.
because everybody is awesome. You go to
Hmm.
a works race, you go to Baja, you go to a Best in the Desert race, you go anywhere, and the people are just so awesome.
Right. Right.
You know,
And I think, a lot of people say this, but in the ATV world, and there's a other few other racing disciplines that I've seen that have been like this, but we are just one big family. And just like any family, pardon my French, but there are going to be shitheads. You're going to find that anywhere. But at the end of the day, we are family. And it's just nice to see that most of us act like that. Like with you coming to Ohio this year for the race, your family, so my family's going to feed you. We're going to do whatever we can to keep you comfortable. You're just
Well,
part of the family. Come on over, hang out.
your dad's a kick in the butt. Um, you know, JJ's dad is also Jeremy. I really enjoy him. He had a couple beers, got a little tipsy. It was kind of
Yeah.
funny. Um,
Yeah.
you know, that event in a whole was just incredible.
Mhm.
We don't always get them like that, but um, you don't know what you miss. So when we were racing, Joe Bird was kind
Mhm.
of an because Doug
Mhm.
Eichner and Joe Bird hate each other. Well, let's put it this way: Doug hasn't forgiven Joe. Joe may have forgiven Doug, but there's a rivalry there that will go down in history. And Joe and I having him on the show and getting to talk to him, Joe's a good dude. He really
Mhm.
is. Yeah, when he was racing, he was a first competitor and he was probably a shithead, but
Yeah.
no different than John Natali and some of the other guys, they were there to
Oh,
win,
100%.
you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of great people in our industry. And I think that if we are really going to further the industry, we got to make some changes.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
We need another sport quad, but we say that every day.
Right.
Um,
Right.
thank you to
Yeah.
Yamaha for building a great Yamaha 450, and they make a great
Mhm.
700. So
Yeah.
Yamaha, hats off to you guys for being so
Mhm.
good. Um, but we'll just have to see where it goes and see how long we can carry this thing out.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I think, like you said, changes need to be made to keep progressing because we need to keep progressing to stay relevant. And I feel like the changes are going to be coming at some point. It's just going to be when. And hopefully, you and I are both going to be here when they do happen.
Yeah, but and if I'm not, I mean, I had a great run, and thank you guys for everything, and thanks for the ATV industry, and I'm going to keep doing the ATV talk and
Mhm.
uh, build as many cool bikes as I can for as many people that want what I do and my brother does, and maybe I'll build some special stuff on the side, and if
Yeah.
somebody finds it in their heart that wants me to be the guy at the races for them, hey, I'm there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's building is a passion that it's a lost art, and you have to
Mhm.
want the sacrifice of yourself to do it because the rider may be off talking and having a great time and seeing the pretty girl. You're not that guy. You're the guy
Mhm.
that's well, you're married to a pretty girl, but that's you just got lucky. Um,
Yeah.
you know, most mechanics are freaking dirty and in the back and
Mhm.
not talking to people and they're so focused on what they're doing they didn't even notice that there were people there.
Right.
Um, and that's just the way it's got to be, I
Right.
think.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing too is I feel like, because you've had many people that have been on your show that have been previous mechanics from back in the day, and they always say, like to be a good mechanic, nobody even knows you're there. And in some cases, you're correct, but people like yourself, and I feel like not to insert myself, but I feel like I'm one of those people as well. We see a sport that isn't thriving right now and everyone needs to kind of do their part. So if I look up from working on a bike and there's people standing there, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to make conversation with them because I don't know who they are. They might be someone that just found out about ATVs and they want to come check this thing out. If nobody talked to them all weekend, they may just go home and forget all about it. If somebody, whether it's a rider, a mechanic, a team owner, whatever, somebody gives them that time of day to speak to them, ask them a couple questions, make conversation, they might go home really like realize that yeah, ATV racing is really cool. I really want to get into this myself. And so, and I think that's a big advantage to what you've been doing too with the ATV Talk show and all the other shows that you do along with it.
You know, we talked about it earlier, but I met Raphael Sonic
Hmm.
in France at Pont-de-Vaux in 2001.
Hmm.
We won the first four stroke
Yep.
on the 60 Raptor, and that man was not what you would call anywhere involved in the ATV world. He was an enthusiast in Poland that raced to the
Hmm.
Polish series, but he wasn't, obviously who he ended up becoming and ended his career as. And he stood there with his little bag and everything and waited till I was clear to talk to him. And yeah, we formed an instantaneous relationship. And uh, I've been to Poland numerous times, been all over the world with that guy, and
Yeah.
uh, that's what it leads to. These are lifelong friendships, lifelong relationships that you're going to have,
Hmm.
and that's great. I mean, the people that come on the show, I love it. Um,
Yeah.
when I got to go to the race and walk through the pits, and some of the guys that I'd only had on the show, they get to meet face to face, and you get a smile and stick their hand out. Hey, it's great to see
Yeah.
you, and or you see them once or twice every couple years. Um,
Right.
it's a great feeling, and
Hmm.
I don't know where it's going to go from here,
Right.
but I'm holding on to the reins, and we'll see what happens, and just
Absolutely.
don't like the punch on me, and we'll be good.
Right. Right. So if there was somebody listening to this podcast has made it this far and doesn't ride but has been thinking about getting into ATVs, what's something that you'd want to tell that person right now?
If they're just learning and just getting into it, make sure that the people that you listen to check their resume. Don't go on YouTube, don't go on the forums. Call a professional and have a conversation. If the professional won't talk to you, move on to the next professional, because you're not going to get the information you need from YouTube. You're not going to get the information you need from the forums, because the forums, yeah, I'm just going to say it, they're evil. There's a lot of bad information out there. A lot. There's a lot of people out there that think they know that don't know shit. And you want
Hmm.
to stay as far away from them as you possibly can. And I'd say that's 90% of the people on the forums.
Right.
They don't lie. If you don't like what I said, you know what? My number's listed on the show. You can call me up, or you can hit me in the DMs. I'm okay with it. But if you're going to go out and ride, call a professional, especially
Mhm.
somebody that's been doing it. Let's just say you're in Ohio, call Mark Notman. That guy's phenomenal. He talks. If you can get him on the phone, you can get a hold of Leon. He will talk to you. Um, if you're in California or you're in the West, Duncan Racing, myself, I answer the phone almost every day. I'll be more than glad to give you some time. Um, there's other people in California. There's other people in the industry that will talk to you and will answer the phone. And make sure you get proper instruction. Always wear your safety gear. And for you younger
Mhm.
riders, when you fall off and get hurt, go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Do not be like us old school people. Go to the doctor, get checked out, make sure you're okay. Because you want to race when you're 50, 60 years old, if it's
Mhm.
fun and do those kind of things. Not like me, where I struggle to even ride because of some of the injuries I have because I didn't take care of them.
Mhm.
So don't be like me, you know.
Right. Right. Learn from your mistakes.
And
Learn
also
from our mistakes.
yeah, learn from our mistakes. Ride a machine that's in your category.
Mhm.
So if you're a beginner, you may not want to jump on a 450. You definitely don't want to jump on a 700. You might want to get on like a Raptor 250 or a 250X, something that's going to teach you the controls and how to ride it. Yeah, I get it. It's a little slow. If you're a strong kid that's, healthy, and you're thinking, you're letting your ego talk, put your ego away and just learn a little bit, and
Mhm.
you'll be okay,
Yeah.
you know. And if you're going to go out and motocross, um, man, there's pros at the track that will teach you and that will guide you. Find
Mhm.
one that you like, listen to what they say, because there's 8 or 10 of them that are really good and really helpful, and they'll teach their craft. And
Hmm.
I think that's great. There's some mechanics there that will teach the craft. And riding an ATV takes a lot of years to master. And it's not just jump on it for the first time and you're going to be the fastest guy in town. It's not going to
Right.
happen.
It takes time.
Motorcycle guys that are super fast can't go from a motorcycle to an ATV and be super fast. They can't.
Correct.
There's
Right.
some motorcycle guys that have become fast, like Gary Denton, but
Hmm.
it didn't happen instantly for the guy. He had Wayne Hinson and a bunch of other people helping him out to get him where he was.
Right. Correct. Correct.
That did that answer your questions, Leon?
It's definitely, yeah. I appreciate you taking this time. And, like I said, it's good to finally hear your story, because throughout all the episodes, you've given out little tiny bits here and there, but to get the story, and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably going to think of more stuff, and we'll probably be back at this again at another day. But it's nice to actually hear your story and let you talk for as long as you need, because you have been around this for a long time. You've got a lot of knowledge, you've got a lot of experiences, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that wants to hear them all.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's
Mhm.
freaking 30 some years working with my brother. And then before that, so I've been doing this for over 40 years. And um, that's a long time to do anything. And
Mhm.
you can't just throw all those experiences away and hide them. There's just and I probably forgot some of the coolest stories, things that have happened and uh,
Mhm.
some of the luck that you have because being successful isn't always about being the best. Sometimes you're
Right.
just flat lucky, and
Right.
I'd rather be lucky than good any day.
Right. I mean, it's just like you hear about other racing disciplines where somebody will get a championship and they never finish better than third all year. It's sometimes some of the things that really stick with you are not the highest of highs. Sometimes it's something that is someone else may not even think is cool, but to you, that's one of the most memorable things that you're going to hang on to.
Right, right. I could tell you
So,
stories about that first Dakar that would just make your hair stand on end because it was unbelievable.
yeah.
Would you ever go back after that? But I, I'm addicted to ATV racing, and I got a chance to go somewhere. Oh, let's go.
Mhm.
But cool stuff, man.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
Leon, I
Well,
want to thank you so much for taking the reins and leading the charge today. Um, this is part two of our two-part series, on
mhm.
me, I guess. Well, it's not, I guess, it was, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me, and I will be more than glad to answer any of those questions. And Leon, again, thank you so much for being my
Yeah,
friend and being part of ATV Talk. I'm looking really forward to the 2025 motocross series with JJ being in the pro class and us
absolutely.
making sure that we do our race reports and talk
Yep.
eight.
Yep, we'll do some pre-race reports, some post-race reports. We'll be talking. I'm sure at some point we're going to be doing a part 3 on Leonard Duncan,
I don't know
and
about that, but 2 hours plus, it's a lot.
right. Well, and it's you've been doing this for so long. You started racing over 50 years ago.
Yes.
That's a lot of stories and a lot of time to try to condense down into 2 hours.
Well, check this out. My first race on a three-wheeler ran over my leg and crashed. My first race on a motorcycle, I crashed.
Not all races go very well.
I don't
I think we
remember
all
my
know
first
that.
race. I don't remember my first race on a quad, but I probably crashed.
Back in the day, you probably ran your leg over on that too.
Probably. I probably did because we were no heel guards and no Nerf bars.
Right, right. Exactly.
So it is
So,
what it is. But again, thank you so much, brother. And
absolutely my pleasure.
No, it was mine. It was really mine. And there again, anybody that has any questions or anything else, make sure you reach out. And if you're in Ohio or you're at a race and Leon's there, ask him questions. He is a beacon of knowledge and will help you all the way through. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV-TALK Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.